Marshawn Lynch and the rest of the NFL found out the 2018 schedule yesterday. And how did Beast Mode celebrate? By giving us an impression of his new head coach.
Monday night again. Denver. Big game. You know, division.
You know what? They showing a lot of. You know what? I think Gruden must have cut some side deals.
Because he got a lot.
I mean, you feel me?
Monday night games.
We got a lot of primetime games, man. So, hey, the more you can do, the better.
The more you can do, the longer you can stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an NFL motto in the locker room.
And the Raiders they open up the season with the late Monday night game. It'll be very interesting for John Gruden. He's used to being a part of the Monday night game. He gets to open up the season on Monday night.
Yeah.
What's up, Jenna? I can't listen, audience. I just gotta tell the audience, if we seem a little more distracted than usual, it's because Jenna drinks this concoction during the breaks.
It is bone broth. Most people are drinking it.
And I made her laugh somehow, and it came out the nose, out her ears, on the ground.
Listen, we're all family now, right? No judging.
Well, no, we're not judging.
Right?
I didn't need to see that side of you, but we've seen it.
Well, maybe you can keep your very funny jokes to yourself next time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Let us move on to stories to start your morning. We are sticking with the NFL schedule release. Thursday Night Football will be on Fox this season. It kicks off Week 4 with the Vikings going to L.A., taking on the Rams. The Thursday night schedule jam-packed, great head-to-head matchup. CC, you excited?
I'm very excited. Thursday Night Football, it's a tremendous opportunity also for Fox. But I love that NFL made some adjustments, that they're not playing all these divisional games. And typically it's hard to have consistent matchups if you're going to have a schedule like that, playing only games in your division. And those are the most important games. You want more time to prepare. So now we have some cross-division matchups. We have some cross-conference matchups in prime time. It's going to be an exciting season.
And the thing is this, that the Sunday afternoon is always awesome because there's so many games going on. Like, so it's always a bit of a letdown when there's a game that you're not excited for. That's the primetime game. And so we got lucky that we now have it, and they've adjusted the way the Thursday night schedule is. Starts with a great one. You have Panthers, Steelers later in the year. You get Colts, Patriots. A lot of really good games.
Yeah, pregame show starting on the network here in New York City. Starting out, I think it's going to be Howie Long, Terry Bradshaw, and my man Michael Strahan. Hey, Shanks, if you want to add me to that, I'm available. I can come up downtown, a little car service.
CC's right here.
I'll let you boy.
If you get a car.
No, I'm willing to catch it. No, I'm going to need a car service.
Let me rethink that real fast.
Me and Dusty, we doing Thursday night. Let's do that.
Oh, Dusty left already. Oh, no, Dusty's still here. With the draft just 6 days away, the Broncos are open for business and trades. John Elway said he's open to trading Denver's number 5 overall selection. Plenty of mock drafts had the Broncos taking a quarterback. But there might not be many options left if they trade back. CC, would this be a smart move for the Broncos?
Two pretty good quarterbacks right there, Dan Marino and John Elway, both of them making significant impacts on their franchise. I wouldn't be surprised. I believe they're in love with a quarterback. I believe it might be Baker Mayfield. Now, if it's not Baker Mayfield, that means they were throwing up smoke signals. But if Baker Mayfield's not there available at 5, I can see him trying to get multiple picks. There are a number of needs that the Broncos have, especially on that offensive line. Also, they could use a running back. So trying to get multiple picks, if your quarterback's not there, it makes a lot of sense for the Broncos.
Man, I like them going the other way, trading up to number 2 with the Giants. Assuming that the Browns take Josh Allen, you then have your pick of all the other quarterbacks. And if you're the Giants, why would you do that? Well, if you aren't taking a quarterback and you love Chubb and Barkley, at 5, you're guaranteed to get one of those 2 players. Because it'd go quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. Whoever the Browns take, you get the other guy, and you add an extra pick. Probably add an extra second-round pick for moving down. Still might get the top player on your board. So I'd look for Denver more likely to move up, to jump the Jets, in case the Jets, the reports are true that they want Baker, rather than move back in the draft.
All right, NBA. Moving on to college football, Alabama quarterback Jalen Hurts is making headlines. Well, his father is. Hurts' dad said his son will transfer if he's not the starting quarterback. Hurts was benched in the second half of the national championship game that Alabama went on to win. Nick Saban said he had a positive meeting with Jalen's father, and Jalen has, quote, made a significant amount of improvement. CC, what would your advice to Jalen Hurts be?
Bounce like a basketball, like the NBA, like you said. I would get on going down the street. This is happening in college football more than we're aware. There's more transfers in college football and basketball than at any other point that we've seen in recent history. And the reason why is because not only the expectations of younger players to play early and make an immediate impact, it's the expectations of their parents. So when you're like Jalen and you come in as a true freshman and you start, and then at Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, all these top programs, even if you're a starter, that's not secure you're going to start there 3 or 4 years. They call it recruiting over top of you. And Jalen has been recruited over top of him. The quarterback that they have now is a better thrower of the football than Jalen will ever be. At Clemson, they're going through the same thing. Ohio State, they're going through the same thing. So this is a part of college football. But if I was Jalen, if I'm not the starter, I got to get out. I haven't been redshirted. I can play 2 other solid years. I'm going to do that somewhere else.
Listen, Jalen got to Alabama at 17, so he's only 19 years old. As CeCe mentioned, he hasn't been redshirted. If he doesn't win the job in the spring, you go transfer somewhere, sit out your year, get 2 years as the starting quarterback, because with his style of play, he's not a pro. So, like, if he wants to play quarterback, like, he's got 2 more years to do it. You don't want to – I understand it's great to win championships. What's great is to play. Win championships and not be a part of the team except for in practice, that doesn't seem as
when they insert someone in the national championship game and he makes a once-in-a-lifetime type throw, and he has that type of ability to grow his game, no, the future's not bright for him. Roll Tide on him. Roll out, dog.
NBA playoffs. Spurs on the verge of elimination, down 0-3 against the Warriors, but things might go from bad to worse for San Antonio fans this offseason. Recent reports have the Lakers pursuing Kawhi Leonard in a trade this summer. Nick, would Kawhi be a good fit out in L.A.?
Man, I think that's one of 2 cities he wants to go to. I think he wants to go to Los Angeles or New York. I think his group, as Pop talks about it, that's where they want him. And Kawhi has the hammer in this, not the Spurs, because he can tell them, here are the only places I will sign an extension.
Yeah.
And that will then drastically change what places will give up.
NBA players have that leverage, because if they decide not to sign a deal, a lot like Paul George, you mentioned it, they have the hammer. That will be utilized in this, so you have to consider that.
Absolutely. And the Lakers, by the way, even if they trade for Kawhi, with Brook Lopez coming off the books, with KCP coming off the books, with their ability to use the stretch provision on Luol Deng, they could add Kawhi and another max player. So, like, yes, I think this is a very real possibility. I think it's exponentially more likely Kawhi is a Laker next year than he's a Spur next year.
Yes, I like that. I still think there is a chance that he is a Spur. I do believe that LeBron James San Antonio will be on his. We saw the emotional reaction of LeBron after the game. He mentioned, I love Pop. You know, he's had history with Pop, USA basketball. So that Kawhi LeBron thing, that's the only way I believe that he stays there. Why it's for Boston, New York, Los Angeles to try to be bidding. I think the best places are Boston and the Lakers, because they have the assets.
All right, Kawhi Spurs taking on the Warriors. Good news for the Warriors. They beat the Spurs 110-97 last night to take commanding 3-0 lead. Bad news for the Warriors. Steph Curry's MCL injury could force him to miss the start of round 2. Nick, how big of a deal is this for Curry and the Warriors?
It's an enormous deal. The only reason them not having Steph Curry has not been a huge deal, apologies for the double negative there, in this round, is because they're playing a team that can't score.
The one team.
The one team in the playoffs that they would be totally fine without Steph Curry against is this team. I'll be honest with you. I think they could be competitive with the Spurs without Steph and KD. They'd still have the best offensive player in Klay Thompson by far in the series.
Yes.
I mean, the Spurs are just so limited offensively without Kawhi Leonard. And what allowed the Spurs to thrive this regular season, their attention to detail, their defensive intensity, well, almost everyone tries to emulate that in the postseason. Nobody's going half speed in the postseason, so that advantage is muted. But they're going to be playing the Pelicans in round 2. Pelicans are playing for that as a franchise, the best basketball they've played as a franchise since Chris Paul was there, and maybe better than when Chris Paul was there. You have no answer for Anthony Davis. You can't play your small ball lineup without Anthony Davis. You have to play, when you're playing Anthony Davis, I should say, you have to play either JaVale or Zaza. So then your 5-man is not a scoring threat. If your point guard is also not a scoring threat, well, now we got real issues. So, yeah, it would be a big deal if he misses 2 games of this upcoming series.
It would be a huge deal because not only the style of play, not only do they have a brow, which would be a nightmare for them. Joel Embiid said that it's a nightmare for Miami against him. Man, the brow going against Golden State, the decisions that they have to make. And right now, let's judge the backcourts of all the teams playing in the playoffs. Harden, Chris Paul. Oh, yeah, I like them. But besides them, who's playing better?
Than Holiday and Rondo?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Right.
Nobody.
So that's the reason why the Steph not being available at the beginning of that, when Golden State has the home court advantage. Because if they lose, I think the tricky part to the question is not the start of that series. If they lose home court advantage,
right,
I believe huge advantage to the Pelicans if they're able to get one of those games without Steph being there.
Well, and if you just look at the matchups. So you say Drew Holiday, we know you're going to be undersized, but guess what? Drew Holiday, you got to chase Klay Thompson around the entire game. If Steph's not out there, again, I'm looking at it with Steph not out there. Drew Holiday, do your best against Klay. You're one of the best guard defenders in the league. Each one more. We don't ask anything from you offensively. So we spend all your energy defensively against KD. And then we're going to let Rondo and Anthony Davis do a pick-and-roll action, high pick-and-roll that has absolutely devastated the Portland Trail Blazers in this series. Like, that is a tough matchup for them. The Warriors would be significant favorites if Steph is out there. If Steph were 80% but playing the entire series, I would look at them as significant favorites. If they're potentially going to, man, if they don't have Steph the first few games of that series, you have to change the math on it.
Is this because they have such a commanding lead over the Spurs that they're just going to give it to him now, maybe let him sit out for a few games in the next series as well? Could he pull a Steven Jackson and force himself back in if he wanted to with this MCL sprain?
Oh, I don't think so.
Are they being cautious? Are the Warriors being cautious, or does he really need this time?
No, the inability to move laterally with an MCL, like we have seen this injury, and it is significant.
Okay.
You're out 5 or 6 to 8 weeks. Like, we're hoping at 6 weeks that he's close to 100%. But you can't play offense or defensive basketball when your MCL is still strained.
And both are true. Yes, they're being cautious, and it's a significant injury, but they just signed Steph Curry to a supermax contract.
They're not taking
They're not going to let him risk it. Like an eye injury, as odd as it sounds, a face injury, very different than a guy's knee. They're going to be super cautious with him. And by the way, I mean, he hurt his MCL in the playoffs 2 years ago, and they were cautious with him then. It wasn't as significant of an MCL injury as this one was.
All right, moving on to the Pelicans, who returned home after crushing the Blazers twice on the road, only to crush them once at home. Solid performances from Nikola Mirotic and Anthony Davis, 58 combined points out of those two. Pellies will have an opportunity to get their first playoff sweep in franchise history. CC, have they been able to just dominate Portland like this, especially that backcourt?
It's easy to start with the brow, but they have dominated from a defensive standpoint. Since the All-Star break, or since Boogie Cousins, whichever marker you want to take, defensively, they've been one of the best in the league. As far as deflections, steals, a lot of times people don't calculate those things to be important, but Alvin Gentry has this team playing an elite-level defense. Their backcourt has been special. Drew Holiday moving him off the ball. He is an unorthodox point guard. He is really a 2-guard, and moving Rondo into the starting lineup, to giving him control of the team, also giving him a lot of control in the play calling. That's one of the drawbacks with Rondo. He's such a bright floor general that sometimes he has a little bit of conflict with the coach because he likes to call his own plays. And you could see that him and Alvin Gentry being in sync. But the ability for Drew Holiday to play at a superstar level, a two-way player, great offensive player, great defensive player. You're not going to see a lot of that in the playoffs besides Klay Thompson. That has allowed the brow to quietly, you talk about you got 28 and 11, quietly, because these other pieces. But the witness protection program, I believe, has been one of the keys. Mirotic, man, coming over from Chicago, dropping 30 last night. To me, he's always played kind of the 3 or 4 position, but to me, he's far more physical playing with the Pelicans, and his shot selection is a lot better playing with them. So a great fit for the rest of that team.
They're 8-0 since he got inserted in the starting lineup. They haven't lost. They're outscoring people by 15 points per game since Mirotic got
I'd like to say I knew that.
Into the starting lineup. No. Well, I mean, but your eyes were telling you what the stats proved out. Like, The issue for the Pelicans was, going into these playoffs, A, we thought Portland had the better backcourt. They haven't for 3 games. But B, their total lack of depth is what concerned me. I thought this would be a good series. I thought the Blazers would win in 7. But the Pelicans only have 4 guys you trust. In Anthony Davis, their backcourt, Rondo and Holiday, and Mirotic. What they've been able to do is play those 4 guys 35-plus minutes a game, except they haven't had to in the last 2 blowouts. And as long as they don't get in foul trouble, as long as there's no injury, they're going to have a quality lineup on the court at all times. Before we move on, though, I want to say one thing about the other team involved in this Blazers team, that maybe we should have seen some red flags when they were 5-7 in the final 12 games of the season. Damian Lillard in 2014, in his first playoff series ever, shot 48% and hit a series-winning buzzer beater against the Houston Rockets in Game 6. It was about as good of a debut playoff series as a guard can have, including a historic buzzer beater. Since then, he is a sub 40% shooter in the postseason. Since then, he has yet to have one series or moment close to what he had in his very first one. He was supposed to be the second-best player in this series. He was supposed to be the first-team All-NBA guard that we saw all year long, and he just flatly hasn't been. It's not all on him, but if Drew Holiday is better than Damian Lillard, as he has been for 3 games, and you have Anthony Davis, that's how you get up 3 games.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is the expectations for Portland, them being the number 3 seed in the West, they have exceeded what we thought before the season. So let's not get carried away. Sometimes you get into the series, you get matchup problem. Golden State, they got the perfect matchup. This is not the matchup. And from a defensive standpoint, Alvin Gentry has taken them out of their sets. They have made their shots that they take, especially the backcourt, more difficult than they're used to.
And give the Pelicans credit, because when you take the first 2 on the road, you don't blame them if you get a little complacent when you go home, saying, hey, we just got to split this. We'll be up 3-1. That's a commanding lead. They won this game and therefore won this series, because up 3-0 wins the series, in the first quarter. 36-20 in the first quarter, blitz them. So they essentially won this series as the underdog through 9 quarters of basketball. And so we're going to look back to that block in Game 1 that Drew Holiday had at the rim that saved that game. They end up winning Game 1. They blow them out in Game 2. They blow them out in Game 3. Now, the only question is this thing going to go 4 or 5 for the Pelicans?
All right, we'll take a break. One more segment coming up. Is Des Bryant on the verge of joining Odell in New York? Oh, boy. Next on First Things
We'll
First.
get them to work out with you, Jim. Get both of them.
They would be lucky.
You're a brave man, Mr.